Meenakshi ma'am, please start. Please unmute yourself.
Am I audible now, ma'am?
Yeah.
Hello?
Clear.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
Pleasant good morning to one and all. On behalf of the organizing institution, I, Dr. Meenakshi Vasnik, welcome you all in today's online 7 days interdisciplinary academic discourse on the very crucial topic 7 decades of independent India, ideas and reflections, being organized by Department of Political Science, Rashtrasant Tukuraji Maharaj Nagpur University Nagpur, Manoharrao Kamdi Mahavidyalaya Nagpur, and Rajkumar Kewal Ramani Kanya Mahavidyalaya Nagpur. In today's inaugural session, I extend my warm welcome to the most prodigious personality of our university, today's guest of honor, Dr. Sanjay Dudhe Sir, Honorable Professor, Vice Chancellor of RTM Nagpur University, Nagpur. I welcome you, sir, in today's program. I heartily welcome our keynote speaker, Honorable Dr. Chitra Redkar Madam, Associate Professor, Deputy Chair, Humanities and Social Sciences, Associate Dean, IIESR Pune. I welcome you, ma'am, in today's program. I extend my warm greetings to the chairperson of today's inaugural function, Honorable Dr. Pradeep Meshram Sir, Professor and Head Department of Sociology, J.M. Patel College, Gondia. I welcome you, sir, in today's program. I extend my warm welcome. I welcome you, madam. I welcome you, sir, in today's program. I extend my warm welcome to our resource persons, Honorable Dr. Urmila Dabir Madam, Chairman, Board of Studies, English, RTMNU Nagpur, Honorable Dr. Shailendra Lende, Professor, Department of Marathi, RTMNU Nagpur, Honorable Dr. Ravi Khangai, Assistant Professor, Department of History, RTMNU Nagpur, Honorable Dr. Sandeep Tundurwar, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, and Shri Binjani City College, Nagpur. It is my equal duty to extend my warm welcome to our conveners of the program, Professor Dr. Shamrao Koreti Sir, Associate Dean Humanities and Head of the Department of Political Science, RTMNU Nagpur. Dr. Usha Sakure Madam, Principal, Manoharrao Kamdi Mahavidyalaya Nagpur, and Dr. Urmila Dabir, Principal, Rajkumar Kewal Ramani Kanya Mahavidyalaya Nagpur. I also welcome the coordinator of the program, Professor Dr. Mohan Kashikar Sir, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, RTMNU Nagpur. Dr. Vikas Jambulkar Sir, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, RTMNU Nagpur. I extend a warm welcome to the organizing secretaries, Mr. Pramod Kanekar, Mr. Sachin Chapke, and Mr. Kishore Patil in today's inaugural program. I also feel immensely gratified and indeed my earnest duty to bid all the learned participants a graceful welcome. The aim of the academic discourse of the momentous occasion of 75 years of independence, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, is to awaken the national spirit of every important journey that has been experienced from various dimensions of historical, political, economic, social, and literature to the strong pillars of Constitution of India. Keeping this objective in view, a meticulous framework of academic discourse has been planned, which comprises of an outstanding compendium of 6 erudite scholarly presentations through the dynamic, charismatic, renowned, and eminent faculties as a resource persons. The program would be conducted from tomorrow, that is 26th March to 1st April 2022, daily at 11 a.m. to 12 noon through YouTube platform. Dear participants, we are sure that the phenomenal and the mind-grabbing strategies and deliberations of the resource person in these 6 academic discourse would definitely open up a new ways of understanding and excogitating the very vision of what is called the 7 decades of independent India, its ideas and reflections. May I now invite Honorable Dr. Usha Sakure Madam, the convener of today's inaugural function, to say a few words of encouragement. Over to Usha Sakure Ma'am.
Thank you, Meenakshi Madam. Good morning. At the outset, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and pay regards to all the dignitaries of today's program. Guest of honor, Dr. Sanjay Dudhe Sir, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, RTM Nagpur University, Dr. Chaitra Redkar Madam, IISER Pune, Dr. Pradeep Meshram Sir, Chairperson of today's program, Dr. Urmila Dabir, Chairperson Board of Studies English, Dr. Shamrao Koretti Sir, HOD, Department of Political Science, RTM NU, all the faculties who are attending this webinar, and dear students. It is indeed a matter of great pride and privilege to be hosting this prestigious webinar on 7 decades of independent India, ideas and reflection. And today remains the inaugural day with interesting discourses lined up for 7 days. Friends, as you all know, India is a home to many traditions, and the largest and most vibrant democracy is celebrating 75 years of independence with a series of programs and projects covering development, governance, technology, reforms, and policy progress over the years. As India caters its 75 years of independence, there are many reasons to be cautiously optimistic about its place in the world. Since independence, India has reclaimed its progressive school of thoughts, namely democracy, secularism, law, respect for human rights, rational and deductive thinking, and science and technology development. Today, one of the world's leading economies with pulsating democratic structure, India's journey over the last 7 decades has been quite a significant event in the world history. India has chosen its own path, keeping the social democratic fabric in place. Today, 20,000 and more colleges and almost half a thousand universities of different caliber and specialities not only provide India with a status of knowledge hub, but also their location in the center of India's quest for social equality provides the society with the most important spaces of training in democracy for the future generations. The devastation of COVID-19 and growing international competitions underscores India's difficulty in transforming itself from a prosperous middle-income country into a safe community and proactively shaping international norms. In this changing global landscape, India has an opportunity to create a new framework for its security, growth, and development, and that of developing countries around the world. Has democracy in India fulfilled the aspirations of its people? Have the institutions delivered? Have public policies succeeded in making substantial differences to living standards? The country is secure on its external borders. Would the country become an economic powerhouse? Can India be a leading power in the years ahead? All these and many more such questions loom large as India competes 7 decades of independence. Let us all celebrate this journey of 7 decades through our intellectual deliberations, which are skillfully planned with our eminent resource person who will highlight the various facets of this journey in an enlightening way, trying to find solutions encompassing literary, historical, social, and cultural background. Let us not deter our spirits from imagining a powerful, prosperous, and peaceful India in 2047 when India celebrates 100 years of independence. With this note, I conclude and hope the deliberations to follow will serve the purpose in meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you very much for your valuable piece of thoughts. Madam, Dabir Madam has not yet joined, I think, no?
No, she hasn't.
Okay.
So please carry on.
Okay. Dr. Urmila Dabir Madam, the convener of today's program, and today's guest of honor, Honorable Dr. Sanjay Dudhe Sir, they are busy with the RRC meeting, so they are unable to join us today. So we are indeed honored to have amongst us Honorable Dr. Chaitra Redkar Madam to deliver the keynote address of today's inaugural function. Dr. Chaitra Redkar is currently working as an associate professor, deputy chair, humanities and social sciences, associate dean, student and campus activities. Madam joined IISER Pune in 2020 as an associate professor. Prior to that, she worked at SNDT Women's University Mumbai till 1998 to 2020. Her area of interest is political ideas in modern India, Gandhian studies, gender studies, and Indian politics. Madam has worked closely with the textbooks development project and in curriculum design in political science. Currently, Madam is analyzing the philosophical discourse in the 19th and 20th century Maharashtra. Madam has also authored several books under reputed publications. I feel equally great and privileged to invite Dr. Chaitra Redkar Madam to deliver the keynote address to our online audience. Over to Redkar Madam.
Hello, good morning. First of all, I think since the program is organized on the occasion of India completing 75 years of independence, so I think let's celebrate, let's wish each other to celebrate India's independence, because that is the context, that is the occasion that has provided us the opportunity to interact and look back. Thank you in the very beginning to all the conveners, organizers, for inviting me at your organization. It has always been pleasure to come there, though this time it's online, virtually we are meeting, but our colleagues, Professor Kashikar, with whom we have been interacting since a very long time, Professor Sachin Sapke, who has contacted me, and a couple of other colleagues from the department and across humanities and social science departments of Rashtrasanta Tukadoji Maharaj Nagpur University. It's a very important occasion and a great responsibility on my shoulders to present a keynote address, because keynote addresses are kind of expected to provide a perspective on the basic theme which is selected for the series of talks. And very interestingly, you have named it as intellectual discourse on various aspects of India's polity and society. As it was introduced in about me, I come basically from political science background, and my area of specialization has been political thought, political theory. So it's but natural that whatever I'll be talking today and whatever I'll be sharing with you will have some background of my own discipline and my own concerns. Having said this, I'm aware that this is an interdisciplinary kind of occasion, interdisciplinary kind of interaction. And also the place where I'm working right now has been facilitating interdisciplinary kind of interactions across the discipline, not just within humanities and social sciences, but also in natural sciences and social sciences humanities. So that is something which is a deep concern, that is something which has been shaping the way I think and I conduct my research. Also, if we look at it, that's how the life is. For our academic purpose, for our research purpose, for organizing our academic activities, we may compartmentalize ourselves into separate departments. But life is not segregated, life is not compartmentalized. So what is political and what is social, and what is social and what is psychological can't be mechanically compartmentalized when we are actually living our life. And that makes it necessary that when we look at our surroundings, when we take overview of our past, we look at it in a holistic perspective, and we try to learn from various disciplines, various academic endeavors as much as we can. That is something which I would be trying to do in this interactive session. I'm told that in this particular meeting, mostly the colleagues are participating and students would be joining online on YouTube. Um, so I think I need to keep in mind that I'll be talking to two different set of audience. Of course, all you learned people are uh, very renowned researchers and in your respective disciplines, and you know a couple of things which I'll be talking about, and much more than what I will present here before you. But I'm also talking with the students, so um, I'm trying to maintain balance of the two different levels of scholarship. So, where shall we begin? When we are talking about the past uh, 75 years, or when we are talking about taking overview of past 75 years, 75 years in a way is a very long period. But if you look at human history, it's just like fraction of a second in life of a human being, because ultimately when we talk about human societies have history of hundreds and thousands of years. So in that long history of thousands of years, 75 years is just like a second or a fraction of a second. But if we look at it from the viewpoint of a particular society, 75 years is not a very short period. So it has two dimensions. On one level, it is part of human evolution. On the other hand, it is one aspect of evolution of a society into a particular direction. In case of India, and which is true also in case of many of the third world countries, or countries of the global south, as we call them, uh, we find that these societies are uh, very characteristically different than the European societies. In case of India, which all of us are aware, is a very old civilization. It's an ancient civilization. So, as we call it, that as a nation we might be young, but as civilization we are very old. So, this young nation and old civilization had certain very complex kind of issues when 75 years back we became independent. When I'm saying very characteristic kind of issues, I also need to point out to what existed prior to independence and what existed prior to the advent of the British rule. When we are saying that we existed as an old civilization, and nobody can deny that, at the same time, we also need to keep in mind that territorially, geographically, what exists as India today, or what existed before partition, was never one uh, single country as such. There were different kingdoms. It was divided into different kingdoms. The ethos, the cultural ethos, the spirit, of course, was common, but still, as a political unit, we were never one single kind of an existence. And that is something which makes things complex. If we look at the idea of nation state, and I'm not talking about just nation, but nation state, then nation state certainly has a recent origin. When I'm saying recent origin, we need to look at a couple of centuries back, and we find that the idea of nation state as it exists, and for the sake of uh, basically considering the students who are attending, I think I'll little bit talk more about the idea of nation state. So when we are talking about the idea of nation state, we are basically referring to that kind of a unit where the people, the resident of that particular unit, they consider themselves as bound together, but by some common element, by some common feature, and they simultaneously also claim political sovereignty, the right to govern themselves. And their claim to govern themselves is acknowledged by the international community. And as a result of these three processes, what emerges is called as nation state. We find that that kind of a nation state is comparatively new. It emerged in Europe with the advent of modernity. And we find that linguistically similar kind of communities, they came together, they formed themselves into one linguistic community, which resulted into formation of various nation states in Europe. So we have Mazzini and Garibaldi playing very crucial role in the consolidation of linguistic communities, respectively in Italy and Germany, and which resulted into formation of Italian nation state or German nation state. And similarly, you will find that across Europe, linguistically coherent kind of communities emerged as nation state. Now, this kind of an arrangement further got recognized, legitimized, and accepted with the Treaty of Westphalia. And we basically consider that the nation state emerged towards the middle of 18th, middle or towards late 18th century. In 19th century, whatever kind of developments happened through colonization, consolidation of mercantile interests, industrial revolution happening in Europe little earlier, all these factors resulted into consolidation of a linguistic national identity in Europe. Now, in today's times, different kind of theories, though challenge this very idea of uniform identity, or they have taken raise objection regarding monolithic kind of identity, monolithic kind of social existence of a national community. The fact remains that till a very long time, these nation states believed that they have some kind of coherent existence, they have some kind of homogeneous linguistic identities. Now, in that context, if we look at the concept of nation state, it has recent origin. And I want to reiterate, I want to emphasize this again and again, because unnecessarily then we land up into controversy and we start saying that India is a very old country. So India is a very old civilization. But if we look at this kind of formation of a nation state, that was a big challenge. Why that was a big challenge? Because the model which existed at the time of independence in 1947, this kind of experiment had not happened elsewhere. In case of Europe, something which I just now mentioned had comparatively coherent kind of an identity. Linguistically similar people had come together and formed nations. But as against this, if we move to this South Asian uh, reality, this subcontinent kind of a country, we find that huge amount of diversity existed. So we have multiple languages, we have numerous religions, we have caste hierarchies. So apart from diversity, we also have different kind of hierarchies existing over here. Even within one single linguistic community, there are sub-regional identities, there are varieties and diversities. So what kind of cultural or linguistic practices which would exist in Vidarbha would not be same as they exist in Konkan. So even inside a Marathi linguistic community, there is ample diversity. And when we are talking about building a nation state, the issue was certainly that of accommodating all these identities, accommodating together all this kind of diversity, and at the same time also demolishing the hierarchies. So you have to retain diversity, but you have to demolish hierarchies was a big challenge at the dawn of independence. And if we look at our past, if we look at past 75 years from this angle, from this perspective, or with reference to this particular challenge, then we come across various different kind of experiences and various diverse kind of processes. One very important factor which we need to recognize is the role of Constitution of India. And Constitution of India has played a very unique role in the context of this issue of diversity and hierarchies. As I mentioned, the issue is that of acknowledging diversity and demolishing the hierarchy. So, two very contradictory processes are necessary. Now, what did our constitution do? And that is something which is the genius of Bharat Ratna Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, that he very intelligently, very creatively addressed these two important concerns. Now, what happens generally when we are talking about unity, we feel, and that has been the tendency across the world, that if we talk about the differences, if we talk about the diversity, then there is always the fear that if we talk about it, then there would be divisive tendencies. To give you a very different but related example could be that of American Constitution. American Constitution didn't really want to provide for political parties because they felt that if you accept that kind of differences in society, the society will not stay united. So they preferred not to recognize, not to acknowledge the need to have many political parties. It is with the later amendments that the party system was became kind of acceptable. But in case of India, if you look at it, the Constitution of India didn't shy away from recognizing the diversity. And that is the biggest strength of Indian Constitution. Rather than just giving some kind of an umbrella identity, rather than putting blanket over the differences and ignoring whatever differences, diversities, pluralities that existed in India, what we did is we went ahead bravely in acknowledging diversity, and we claim that this diversity itself is our strength. Diversity does not amount to divisiveness. Diversity does not amount to fissiparous tendencies. Diversity does not amount, does not result, does not lead to any kind of segregation. So I'm happy being Marathi while I'm Indian. I don't find any kind of contradiction in being Indian and being Marathi. I don't find any contradiction in being Bengali and being Indian. I don't find any contradiction in being Tamil or Telugu and Indian at the same time. So, the way our regional identities were acknowledged, our linguistic identities were acknowledged, that also provided scope for coming together as a nation. And coming together as a nation did not require you and me to give up our linguistic regional identities. Remember, it was only when some kind of a blanket identity, some kind of a dominant one identity was pushed on particular regional identity, the regional identity very aggressively reacted to that merging, to that kind of blanket identity, that kind of rejection of the smaller identity. But as long as you acknowledged those smaller identities, there was never any resentment to be part of the broader identity. The problem was that don't force on us any broad kind of identity or any one particular identity as broad identity. So whether it was imposing Hindi as the only national language, there was resistance from South India because ultimately Hindi was spoken only in particular states. Hindi was not spoken in every state of India. So if you ask somebody to give up Marathi and accept Hindi, there would be problem. But if you say that, okay, learn Hindi and learn Marathi as well, there won't be any problem. So simultaneity, accepting multiple identities, accepting that in a country like India, we exist with multiple identities. What we are is not just one kind of an existence. I'm woman, I'm somebody who now teaches in a science institute, somebody who was teaching earlier in Mumbai, I'm somebody who lived for a very long time in life in Ahmednagar district, so I have some affinity with being Nagari. I call myself as Mumbaikar. My education was in Pune, so I call myself a Punekar. But then when I go outside Maharashtra, my Marathi identity um, becomes important, or also otherwise my linguistic ethos that I claim is that of being Marathi. I'm Indian, and generally we find that it's only when uh, journalists would ask you questions or somebody in so-called rapid fire would place this kind of a question that which identity is more important to you, a Marathi identity or identity of being Indian, then these kinds of conflicts arise. Otherwise, when I'm living a normal life outside media, when I'm not living, when I'm not part of any kind of such binary kind of questions, then those rapid fire questions do not really come in my way in my day to day life. It's rarely that I'm required to choose between such identities, and that's the reality. And if you establish dialogue between different identities, then naturally the more parallels, more overlapping part becomes visible, and the conflict is resolved, and we move towards consensus. Now, that is something which was provided by the Constitution of India, and that is the genius of the Constitution maker. Having said this, we also need to take into consideration, because there are two processes which are very significant. One was that of nation building, and as I pointed out, that because we very cleverly acknowledged diversity. We certainly could accommodate diversity. The other kind of process which was very essential was the building of state, because when we talk about nation state, there are two parts. uh, One is nation and the other part is certainly that of state building, and state is certainly different than uh, national identity. When we are talking about state, we are essentially talking about that kind of a mechanism which is sovereign, which is legitimate in ruling over the people, which has sufficient coercive power with it, but it is not required to use coercion. When I'm saying coercive power, it suggests that even when there is opposition, you are able to handle it. Opposition in the sense, not opposition party as such, but if when the state takes certain kind of decision in the interest of the larger people, and if there is resistance to such kind of decision, such kind of policy, the state has the capability to go ahead in implementing that kind of a decision. So, how to implement that? It could be by building consensus, it could be through dialogue, and if required, with the use of coercion. But to have legitimacy to use coercion. Now, when I'm saying having that legitimate kind of power, it means that the state machinery is acceptable, the state machinery has support of the people. And having support also indicates that there is no need to use violence, there is no need to use any kind of coercion. So, with reference to this kind of an requirement, we find that the question was that we have different kinds of hierarchies that exist in society, any society. In case of India, if we look at it, one very dominant kind of hierarchy, stratificatory system which existed in Indian society is that of the Varna Jati Vyavastha, the Varna Jati system. And it has very deep kind of roots. It exists as occupation system. It has some reference to the way our families and our marriages are organized. That means it has certain implications for the patriarchal system which exists. And since it defined our occupations, it certainly had definite implications, definite economic and financial kind of implications. And because on the basis of caste, somebody's social status was acknowledged, was recognized, it has certain definite implications for the dignity and social status. Considering all these aspects, there was certainly a big challenge to establish the secular authority of the state as above all kind of caste panchayats or caste hierarchies that exist in society, the discrimination which exists in society, and the kind of exploitation which is associated with caste system, with caste identities, and with caste-based practices. To certain extent, with the constitution, we could establish a legal structure that facilitated breaking away from the caste system and the discrimination that existed in the society. But as I mentioned, caste system is not just a formal kind of a system, it's deeply entrenched. So there is much more which we are required to do, because it's not just breaking the formal structures, something which lies out there in our minds, which makes people discriminate between two people on a very subtler level, that is something which needs to go, and there is a lot which we are required to do and we will be required to do in future if we actually want to do away with the humiliation, exploitation, lack of dignity that the caste system invokes. That is one aspect of it. As I mentioned, constitution definitely has facilitated breaking away from caste, but as I said, it's not just the formal structure. What exists in mind also needs to go away. So that kind of a hierarchy and establishing sovereign authority of, over and above this hierarchical structure was one kind of a challenge. Another kind of a challenge was establishing higher authority on the religious institutions and religious kind of authorities which ruled over people's lives. In certain cases, we were successful. In certain cases, again, there is a lot that needs to be done. In case of patriarchal system, again, the constitution did recognize equal status, did guarantee equal rights to women, and we have been enjoying the fruits of the constitution. But we also know then that on subtler level, even when we are on power positions of power, there is some kind of a patriarchal mindset with which we are required to deal. So that has yet to go, and there is a long journey which we will have to uh, travel, which will on the path on which we will be required to go. So these are some of the hierarchies which existed in Indian society, and now they exist in some different form in today's society. Beyond this, certainly there are inequalities, and to establish economic kind of equality, also the state required more power, and it was necessary that state emerges as a sovereign authority. When I'm talking about the financial, the economic aspect of human life, it is not just with reference to individuals or institutions which exist inside the country, but it has also something to do with the international system, because international systems should not decide, should not dictate our economic policies. In that context, also, it was necessary for us to become independent, to assert our sovereignty. To certain extent, we were able to do that, but the kind of international system that has emerged post liberalization has been interfering in the third world countries, and as as part of this global south, we are committed, um, we have promised ourselves and other developing countries that we will fight against the hierarchies, the hegemonies which exist in the international system, whether in the context of military, in the context of armament, in the context of security, or in the context of economic relations. But it's a long journey. And in this long journey, we should equip ourselves with the sufficient knowledge about our past, about our capabilities, about the challenges which are coming from the international environment, from our own society, and the promise which we gave to ourselves 75 years back is something which, if we have to renew, if we have to remind ourselves, then certainly we should look at ourselves more critically. To what extent have we been able to democratize our polity is a question that needs to be asked in our own context and in our own times. Because, as I've said, we had a particular vision of nation building. To certain extent, we walked on that path. To some extent, we were able to accommodate diversity and build Indian nation. Though there are some divisive tendencies, we have been handling them sometimes with coercion, sometimes with appeal, sometimes with dialogue. With various ways, we have been trying to handle these tendencies and build a very strong nation. As far as state building is concerned, there are different hierarchies, and as far as the formal structure is concerned, we were able to establish a structure which could emerge as a sovereign entity and could control the uh, other kind of hierarchies, other kind of stratificatory systems which were ruling human life and our social life. But apart from these two promises, there was another promise which we gave to ourselves, and that promise was of democratizing our societies. When we are talking about democracies, when we are talking about democratizing our societies, it is not just about having regular elections. We are having that, and I'm not ridiculing it, I'm not belittling it, because that is something which is important, which was always important. And if we look around us, we look around in the context of various newly formed democracies, the countries from the third world who experimented with democracies, certainly our performance is very, very good than some other experiments across the world. Because except for a small period of emergency, we have been able to run our democracy very successfully. There were regular elections. There has always been smooth transfer of power. We always had multi-party system in place. But when we are talking about substantive kind of a democracy, I'm not talking just about procedural democracy, but when we talk about substantive democracy, what do we get to see? For instance, if we talk about party system, for a very long time, Congress was the only political party that ruled the central government as well as the governments in the state. That was a challenge that was kind of changed, and coalition kind of a polity emerged, but that too continued only for a couple of decades. From 1990 to maybe 2014, we find that for 2-3 decades, there is some kind of a coalition arrangement, there is some kind of a say that the regional parties had, and a different, altogether different face of Indian Federation we could get to see. But again, we find that we are moving from one party dominant system to one party dominant system. So Congress is replaced by BJP. But again, the party system which exists is one party dominant system. I'm not talking about any one particular party and how good or bad that one political party is. The question that a political scientist needs to ask and needs to deal with is this particular question, that whether one party dominant system is good for the health of democracy. If there is no opposition, if there are if different views are not represented politically, then is it good for the health of any society? Is it the case that procedural democracy, while it succeeds, what while it continues to exist, but is there any space whereby such kind of tendency would facilitate emergence of substantive democracy, real democracy? And the answer, unfortunately, is no, because procedural democracy does not necessarily ensure that all the political organizations, institutions, and structures are essentially democratized. When we are talking about substantive democracy, we don't just want regular elections, we also want parties to be democratic. There should be regular elections inside the parties. The parties should be open to differences. The parties should represent diverse interests in society, not just for the sake of elections, because in case of elections, we know that all political parties have their poster boys and girls too, who represent different castes, different religions, different sections of the society. So they would be put on their posters. We are not talking about that kind of a diversity. We are talking about percolation of power to various sections of society, the power not getting limited to only one particular section, only the dominant section in society. Now, some kind of democratization did happen after Mandal Commission recommendations were accepted, and OPCs started participating in politics in more numbers. But it's not again just about uh, token or symbolic kind of representation. We need to address this particular issue, that when we are talking about sharing of power, it is not just the case that one particular leader of one particular caste group gets a ministry, some portfolio, or is playing crucial role in one particular political party. It's not about that. It is about empowerment of that particular section altogether. Uh, that kind of change, that kind of democratization is something which is necessary, because that was the promise which we gave to ourselves 75 years back. So when we are talking about our journey for last 75 years, and when we are looking at the structures that we created to sustain ourselves as a nation state, to facilitate its people, the people's participation, to facilitate our healthy growth, and how our very peaceful coexistence, healthy coexistence. These are the aspects which we emphasize, which we promise to ourselves. We didn't just talk about equality and freedom, we also spoke about fraternity. So, what about that fraternity? How do we build that fraternity? How do we address the issue of uh, having some kind of a connect with each other, and connect not just by making emotional appeals, which of course we do, and we there are tears to our eyes when we watch good movies, when we sing national anthem together. We have that sentiment of nationalism. We feel national pride when some sports person is awarded, or those kinds of sentiments we do have. So I'm not talking about just about sentiments. Our emotional commitments, our emotional involvements are very deep, but that connect also necessitates that there is some kind of equality. And when we are connected with each other, we are connected not just emotionally, but even as a society, we are on same page, we are on same level, and that is more deep and real kind of a connect. For that, there is much more that we would be required to do, because ultimately the challenge is very huge. The challenge is not very easy. It's about running a country which is almost like a subcontinent, and with our commitment to our constitution, the values which we cherished, which we committed ourselves to when we became independent. I'm sure that for next 75 years, all of us will put all the efforts possible to achieve those goals. I close here. I would be happy to listen to your comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam, for your wonderful, thought-provoking keynote address. You have wonderfully explained that the areas of study in today's education scenario is not compartmentalized anymore, owing to the newly launching policies of national education policies. So, the promoting the study of socio-political, psychopolitical, economic, literature under the umbrella term of interdisciplinary discourse is the need of our today. This kind of intellectual discourse would surely lead to identify our country as a diverse India. You have also talked about the substantive democracy and procedure democracy, which was very noteworthy and benchmark of today's keynote address. We rarely get this kind of opportunity to listen to the words of such erudite scholar. Myself being a professor from literature background, I find affinity towards political sciences, as I find that Marxist literature, feminist literature, and many areas are coexisted in political science and literature as well. So I feel that this kind of interdisciplinary discourses would truly be fruitful to all of our literary aspirants. Thank you very much, madam, once again. We look forward to more of your session in future ahead. Thank you so much, ma'am. We are highly privileged to have amongst us Honorable Dr. Pradeep Meshram sir as a chairperson of today's inaugural function. Dr. Pradeep Meshram sir is currently working as a professor and head UG and PG Department of Sociology, J.M. Patel College, Bhandara. He has rich teaching experience of 25 years. He has been invited as a resource person in several seminars and workshops. 3 research scholars have been awarded under his able guidance. Sir is an ex-executive member of RRC 15 of Indian Sociological Society, India. He is a member of Youth for Human Rights International, YHRI. Sir has edited 4 books, solo book, and 6 textbooks under reputed publications. May I now request Dr. Pradeep Meshram sir, the chairperson of today's inaugural program, to deliver his presidential address to the gathering. Over to Dr. Pradeep Meshram sir.
मी मराठीमध्येच बोलणार आहे.
Sure,
आजच्या या कार्यक्रमाचे उद्घाटक नागपूर विद्यापीठाचे कुलगुरू माननीय डॉक्टर संजय दुधे सर, या आजच्या कार्यक्रमाच्या कीनोट ॲड्रेसर बीजभाषक चित्रा रेडेकर मॅडम आणि पार्टिसिपंट मित्रमैत्रिणी, आपण या देशातील संविधानाच्या एका प्रसंगाच्या संदर्भामध्ये आपण चर्चा आयोजित केलेली आहे आणि रेडेकर मॅडम यांनी अतिशय असा एक वाईड कॅनव्हास घेऊन त्याची चर्चा त्यांनी केलेली आहे. त्यात त्यांनी सोशो पॉलिटिकल इश्यूज, सोशो सायकोलॉजिकल इश्यूज, पॉलिटिकल सायकोलॉजिकल इश्यूज यांना वेगळ्या अँगलनी मांडण्याचा प्रयत्न केलेला आहे आणि अतिशय सुंदर शब्दात त्या व्यक्त झालेल्या आहेत. खरं तर यानंतर खूप काही बोलावंसं उरलेलं नाही, तरी पण एका समाजशास्त्रीय पर्स्पेक्टिव्हने मला थोडंसं बोलावंसं वाटतं. जास्त वेळ घेणार नाही. तो पर्स्पेक्टिव्ह मी मांडण्याचा प्रयत्न करतो. आपण जेव्हा एखाद्या संविधानाची चर्चा करतो तेव्हा ते संविधान सगळ्यात महत्वाचं म्हणजे कोणत्या तरी एका समाजावर लागू होणार असतं. त्या समाजाची एक व्यवस्था असते, त्या समाजाचा एक भूतकाळ असतो, त्या समाजाचा एक इतिहास असतो, त्या समाजाची एक संस्कृती असते. आणि तो समाज ज्या स्थितीतून वर आलेला असतो त्या ऐतिहासिक पार्श्वभूमीवर हे संविधान आपण लागू केलेलं आहे. खर तर राज्य, लोकशाही हे संकल्पना आपण युरोपमधून इकडे आणल्यात. संविधानाच्या कन्सेप्ट आपण घेऊन आलो आणि आपण ते अशा समाजात रुजविण्याचा आपण प्रयत्न करतो आहोत की ज्या समाजाला गेल्या 2-2.5 हजार वर्षामध्ये लोकशाहीची कोणती पार्श्वभूमी नाही. बरं, लोकशाहीची पार्श्वभूमी नाही असं म्हणावं तर त्याचबरोबर एका स्थिर राज्याचीही पार्श्वभूमी नाही. सतत बदलणाऱ्या सीमा, त्यात झालेले राजकीय संघर्ष आणि त्याचबरोबर जाती व्यवस्थेबरोबर सामंतवादी व्यवस्थेचे वेगवेगळे बदलते स्वरूप. अगदी सम्राट अशोकाच्या काळापासून जिथे शेतीची व्यवस्था विकसित होणं सुरू होते तिथपासून तर अगदी शिवाजी महाराजांच्या काळापर्यंत आणि इंग्रज येईपर्यंत सामंतवादाने, जमीनदारी व्यवस्थेने बदलवलेली आपली रूप. आणि त्यातही महत्वाचं म्हणजे यात धर्माचं असलेलं प्राबल्य. ज्या धर्माच्या प्राबल्यामुळे या देशातील जो खालचा वर्ग होता, तुम्ही त्याला पाहिजे असल्यास खालच्या जाती असं म्हणा, त्यात स्त्रियांचाही अंतर्भाव होतो. यांच्या उठावाचे तेवढे काही मोठेसे असे इतिहासही नाहीत. म्हणजे कल्चरली बोलायचं झालं तर गुलामीची सवय झालेला असा एक समाज, गुलामीच्या संस्कृतीची सवय झालेला समाज, विषमतेच्या संस्कृतीची सवय झालेला समाज, पुरुष सत्तेच्या व्यवस्थेची सवय झालेला हा समाज. आणि अशा समाजामध्ये आपण हे संविधान लागू करण्याचा प्रयत्न करतो. बरं, हे विषमता फक्त खालच्या जातीपुरतीच मर्यादित होती असं नाही. म्हणजे अनेकदा आपण जेव्हा जाती व्यवस्थेची चर्चा करतो तेव्हा आपण फक्त शूद्र आणि अतिशूद्र याच जातींकडे बघत असतो. परंतु वरच्या जातींमध्ये, अभिजन जातींमध्ये सुद्धा जो किरवंत जाती होत्या, या किरवंतांबरोबरही तिथल्या वरच्या जातींनी केलेला भेदभाव, त्यांचं शोषण आणि वरच्या जातीतील स्त्रियांचं शोषण. आता ते महात्मा फुलेंच्या काळामध्ये जाऊन त्या शोषणाची पुनर्मांडणी आपल्याला करता येणं शक्य आहे, परंतु तिथपर्यंत पुन्हा पाठीमागे जाऊन उगाच वेळ वाया घालवण्यापेक्षा आपण संविधानावरच बोलूया. हे सगळे पार्श्वभूमी या संविधानाला आहे. आणि त्याशिवाय या संविधानाला स्वातंत्र्य लढ्याच्या काळामध्ये, त्या वासाहतिक काळामध्ये स्वातंत्र्य युद्धांबरोबर, स्वातंत्र्य संग्रामाबरोबर विविध सामाजिक सुधारकांनी अगदी राजा राममोहन रॉय, महात्मा फुले पासून तर बाबासाहेबांपर्यंत यांच्या लढायांची पार्श्वभूमी आहे. हिंदू मुस्लिम सगळ्यांचीही पार्श्वभूमी आहे, जी पुढे मायनॉरिटीसाठी निर्माण केलेल्या तरतुदीमध्ये आपल्याला त्याचं एक प्रक्षेपण दिसून येते. या अशा अनेक पार्श्वभूमी या संविधानाला आहेत. आणि त्यामुळे जेव्हा आपण संविधानाची चर्चा करतो किंवा संविधानाने कोणत्या कोणत्या गोष्टींना बदलवलेलं आहे, कुठे कुठे धक्के दिलेले आहेत याची चर्चा करतो, तेव्हा या सगळ्या पार्श्वभूमी आपल्याला लक्षात घ्याव्या लागतात. तुम्ही सुजान स्कॉलर्स आहात, त्याच्यामुळे हे खूप काही तपशिलात जाण्याची गरज नाही आहे मला. परंतु त्याशिवाय संविधानाच्या निर्मितीच्या प्रक्रियेमध्ये जे काही चर्चा घडून आल्यात, जे काही डिबेट्स झालेत, त्या डिबेट्सची पार्श्वभूमी आहे. मग त्या डिबेट्समध्ये अगदी स्टेट अँड मायनॉरिटीजने या नावाचं जे काही ड्राफ्ट मेमोरेंडम डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर यांनी नेहरूंच्या कमिटीला दिलेलं होतं, जे रिजेक्ट झालं. म्हणजे संविधान निर्माण करताना त्यात जे लोक बसलेले होते संविधान सभेमध्ये, त्यांचं स्वतःचं सामाजिक स्थान, त्यांनी घेतलेल्या त्यांच्या सामाजिक स्थानांच्या अनुषंगाने घेतलेल्या भूमिका आणि त्या भूमिका जे आपल्याला विसरता येणार नाही. कारण स्टेट अँड मायनॉरिटीज अनुषंगाने डॉक्टर आंबेडकरांना जो एक राज्य समाजवाद पाहिजे होता, जे एक नॅचरल रिसोर्सेस होतं, त्याच्यावर एक समाजाचा अधिकार पाहिजे होता, ते तिथे लागू करू शकलेले नाहीत. किंवा अनेक गोष्टी अशा आहेत ज्या आंबेडकरांना पाहिजे होत्या त्या संविधानामध्ये आलेल्या नाहीत. आणि या सगळ्या मर्यादांसकट ते संविधान निर्माण झालेलं. त्यामुळे जेव्हा आपण एवढ्या वर्षानंतर संविधानानं काय बदलवलं याचं मूल्यांकन जेव्हा आपण करतो, तेव्हा हे मूल्यांकन करताना या मर्यादाही आपण लक्षात ठेवत असतो. कारण या मर्यादा लक्षात ठेवल्या नाही, जर ते डिबेट्स लक्षात ठेवले नाहीत, त्या डिबेटची चर्चा केली नाही, तर कदाचित संविधानाला काय अभिप्रेत होतं आणि काय होऊ शकलेलं नाही आहे हेही आपण समजू शकणार नाही. संविधानाने कुठे कुठे धक्के दिले आणि संविधानाच्या कोणत्या मर्यादा राहिल्यात. कारण या मर्यादा प्रत्येक ठिकाणी मर्यादा असतातच. कोणतंच संविधान हे परिपूर्ण असेल असं घडत नाही. ते परिपूर्ण नाही, म्हणून फ्लेक्झिबिलिटी आहे आणि म्हणून आपण ते वेळोवेळी दुरुस्त्या करत असतो, त्याला परिपूर्णतेकडे नेण्याचा प्रयत्न करीत असतो. तो भाग वेगळा आहे की अनेकदा त्या दुरुस्त्यांमधून डिबेट्समध्ये जे आपण चर्चा ऐकलेल्या असतात, वाचलेल्या असतात, संविधान निर्मितीच्या काळातल्या त्याच्या विरोधातल्या कधी कधी दुरुस्त्या येतात, आल्यात. या सर्व पार्श्वभूमीवर जेव्हा आपण बघतो तेव्हा आपल्या संविधानाच्या या शक्तीस्थळं, संविधानाची शक्तीस्थळं आणि संविधानाच्या मर्यादा या दोघांनाही आपण संतुलितपणे बघितलं पाहिजे. आणि तेही आजच्या काळाच्या संदर्भामध्ये बघितलं पाहिजे. खेडकर मॅडम यांनी एक आढावा घेतलाच आहे. त्या आढाव्यामधून जो काही पार्ट आहे तो वगळून मी बोले नाही. त्यांनी एनईपीची पण चर्चा केलेली आहे. त्यात सगळ्यात महत्वाचा जो मुद्दा मला वाटतो तो आहे पुरुष सत्ताक जाती व्यवस्थेतील आलेल्या बदलांचा. जेव्हा आपण जाती व्यवस्था असं म्हणतो तेव्हा आज आपण त्याला पुरुष सत्ताक जाती वर्ग व्यवस्था असं म्हणतोय. या पुरुष सत्ताक जाती व्यवस्थेला जे भारताचा इतिहास राहिलेला आहे, भारताची समाज व्यवस्था राहिलेली आहे आणि आहे, त्या संविधानानं धक्का दिलेला आहे का? कुठपर्यंत यशस्वी झालेली आहे? अनेकदा आपण जातीची चर्चा करताना जातीला मानसिकता म्हणून बाजूला करून टाकतो, परंतु जेव्हा आपण डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकरांना वाचतो आणि विशेष करून अॅनिलेशन ऑफ कास्ट वाचतो किंवा रिव्होल्युशन अँड काउंटर रिव्होल्युशन इन इंडिया वाचतो, त्यावेळेस आपल्याला माहित होते की जाती व्यवस्था ही काही मानसिकता नाही आहे. जाती व्यवस्था हे वेगवेगळ्या विभिन्न अशा सामाजिक, नागरी, आर्थिक, धार्मिक, प्रशासकीय अशा भिन्न भिन्न सत्तांचं विषम वितरण आहे आणि ती स्थायी स्वरूपातील विषम वितरण आहे. आर्थिक सत्ता विषम स्वरूपात वाटल्या गेलेल्या आहेत, राजकीय सत्ता विषम स्वरूपात वाटल्या गेलेल्या आहेत, वितरित केल्या गेलेल्या आहेत. आणि हे सत्तांचं किंवा अधिकारांचं, अधिसत्तांचं विषम वितरण हा एक उभा पिरॅमिड आहे. या पिरॅमिडच्या टोकावर असणारी कमी लोकसंख्या, ज्यांच्या हातामध्ये अधिकाधिक सत्ता आहे, आणि ज्या पिरॅमिडच्या खाली असणारा बहुसंख्य वर्ग जो सत्तेपासून वंचित आहे. म्हणजे जाती व्यवस्थेचा पिरॅमिड हा जरी सरळ असला तरी सत्तेच्या वितरणाचा पिरॅमिड मात्र उलटा आहे. आणि याला जे एक स्थायी स्वरूप कुठून प्रदान झालं, तर याला स्थायी स्वरूप प्रदान झालेलं आहे धर्मातून, धर्माच्या मूल्यांतून. आणि धर्म ही एकमेव सत्ता होती संस्कृतीच्या निर्मितीची, विविध मूल्यांच्या प्रमाणकांच्या निर्मितीची. धर्माचा पाठिंबा होता या विषम वितरणाला. त्याच्यामुळे संविधानकर्त्यांसमोर एक आव्हानच होत की जर तुम्हाला या खालच्या लोकांना वर आणायचं असेल, त्यांना समान संधी उपलब्ध करून द्यायची असेल, इक्वॅलिटी ऑफ ऑपॉर्च्युनिटीची चर्चा जी आपण प्रिॲम्बलमध्ये करतो, तेव्हा संविधानाने एक अशी व्यवस्था निर्माण करायला पाहिजे असेल की ज्यात या उलट्या पिरॅमिडला पॅरलल आणता येईल. प्रत्येकाच्या संदर्भामध्ये प्रत्येक व्यक्तीला समान सत्ता प्रदान करता येईल. राजकीय संदर्भामध्ये काही प्रमाणामध्ये ते घडून आलं, असं आंबेडकर म्हणतात की एक व्यक्ती एक मत, एक मत एक मूल्य. परंतु ते प्रशासकीय स्वरूपामध्ये घडून आलं का? तर प्रशासकीय स्वरूपामध्ये सत्तेचं हे वितरण घडून यावं म्हणून कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनने काय प्रोव्हिजन केली, तर रिझर्वेशनची प्रोव्हिजन केली, ज्याला आपण इक्वॅलिटी ऑफ ऑपॉर्च्युनिटी, अफर्मेटिव्ह ऍक्शन्स वगैरे वगैरे नावाने संबोधतो. आणि जेव्हा आपण कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बद्दल बोलतो तेव्हा अनेकदा आपण प्रशासकीय सत्तेमध्ये हे समान वितरण घडून आलेलं आहे किंवा नाही याची चर्चा करणं टाळतो. कारण रिझर्वेशन हे फक्त नोकरीचे प्रश्न नसतात, ते प्रशासकीय सत्तेत अधिसत्तेत भागीदारीचे प्रश्न असतात. रिझर्वेशन हा काही इकॉनॉमिक इश्यू नाही आहे, तो फक्त सोशल इश्यू नाही आहे, तो पॉलिटिकल इश्यू आहे. पॉलिटिकल इश्यू यासाठी आहे कारण इक्वॅलिटी ऑफ ऑपॉर्च्युनिटी जी आहे ती इक्वॅलिटी ऑफ ऑपॉर्च्युनिटी इन एम्प्लॉयमेंट नाही आहे, इक्वॅलिटी ऑफ ऑपॉर्च्युनिटी इन पॉलिटिकल पॉवर आहे, इन ऍडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव्ह पॉवर आहे. आणि जर रिझर्वेशनची आपण स्थिती बघितली तर आपण एवढं नक्की म्हणू शकतो की कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनने जे दिलं ते आतापर्यंतच्या सत्ताधारी वर्गाला देता आलं नाही, त्याचं इम्प्लिमेंटेशन करता आलं नाही. आणि न्यायिक सत्तेबद्दल आपण काय बोलू? कोरिजेंडमची जी व्यवस्था आहे न्यायिक प्रणालीतील, ती न्यायिक प्रणालीतील कोरिजेंडमची व्यवस्था खालच्या वर्गाला सरळ सरळ प्रवेशच नाकारते त्या सत्तेत, न्यायिक सत्तेत. सैन्य शक्तीबद्दल काय बोलायचं असेल, तिथे रिझर्वेशन नाहीये. धार्मिक सत्तेच्या वितरणाची सुरुवात तामिळनाडूने केली, पुजाऱ्यांना अपॉइंटमेंट देत. त्याच्याने कितीचा फरक पडेल, त्याचे काय रेफरिकेशन्स होतील, तो चर्चेचा एक वेगळा विषय आहे. त्याचे काय परिणाम होतील चर्चेचा हा एक वेगळा विषय आहे. नागरी सत्ता किंवा अधिसत्ता जरी खालच्या जाती वर्गांना मिळालेल्या असल्या तरी त्यांच्या इम्प्लिमेंटेशन बद्दल आपण खूप काही बोलू शकतो. तो एवढा मोठा विषय असला तरी एवढं एका वाक्यात सांगू शकतो की या नागरी सत्ता अजूनही काही अधिसत्ता पूर्णपणे खालच्या जाती वर्गाला मिळालेल्या नाही आहेत. स्त्रियांची लढाई अजूनही सुरूच आहे. एनडीए मध्ये आता पहिली बॅच येते, तेही सुप्रीम कोर्टाच्या इंटरव्हेन्शन नंतर. प्रश्न असा आहे की जाती व्यवस्थेला, विषमतेवर आधारित जाती व्यवस्थेला नष्ट करत एक समानतेवर आधारित असणारी समाज व्यवस्था निर्माण करण्यासाठी संविधानानं जे स्वप्न बघितलेलं होतं ते स्वप्न पूर्ण होऊ शकेल का? आणि या सर्व सत्तांच्या सगळ्यात बेसिक मध्ये आहे ती एज्युकेशन प्रणाली. लक्षात घ्या, जाती व्यवस्थेने विभिन्न जातींना प्रशिक्षण नाकारलेलं नव्हतं, शिक्षण नाकारलेलं होतं. खालच्या जाती या प्रशिक्षित होत्याच. खालच्या जातींना, शूद्र अतिशूद्र जातींना त्यांच्या त्यांच्या श्रमाचं, कार्यांचं प्रशिक्षण त्यांच्या घरात उपलब्ध होतच होतं. परंतु नाकारलं गेलं होतं ते शिक्षण, एज्युकेशन. प्रशिक्षण हे हाताची कुशलता आहे, शिक्षण हे मेंदूची कुशलता आहे, ते समीक्षेची ताकद आहे. त्यामुळे प्रशिक्षित असणाऱ्या या प्रोडक्शन करणाऱ्या वर्गाला, प्रोडक्शन करणाऱ्या जातींना जेव्हा शिक्षण नाकारलं जाते तेव्हा आपोआपच या जाती फक्त कामगार म्हणून उरतात, फक्त श्रमिक म्हणून उरतात. आपल्या देशाच्या शिक्षण व्यवस्थेमध्ये असं काय घडलेलं आहे का की ज्याच्यामुळे प्रत्येकाला समान शिक्षण मिळेल? कारण आपल्या देशातील शिक्षण व्यवस्था ही जेव्हा प्रायव्हेटाईज होते तेव्हा ती वर्गावर आधारित होऊन जाते. कुणाचा वर्ग काय आहे, कोणत्या वर्गात, त्या अनुषंगाने शिक्षण, कोणतं शिक्षणाची काय अवेल करू शकेल, कोणती शाळा अवेल करू शकेल, कोणत्या क्वालिटीचं शिक्षण मिळवू शकेल. आपली शिक्षण व्यवस्था ही वर्ग व्यवस्थेपासून भिन्न नाही आहे, ती त्याला पॅरलल चालत आहे. आणि मंडळ आयोग सांगतो त्याप्रमाणे खालच्या जाती या खालच्या वर्ग आहेत, वरच्या जाती या वरचे वर्ग आहेत. त्याच्यामुळे आपण जेव्हा असं म्हणतो की वर्गनिहाय शिक्षण व्यवस्था आहे तेव्हा ते आपोआपच आपल्याला ते जातीनिहाय आहे असंही म्हणावं लागतं. आणि नवीन शिक्षण प्रणाली, ज्या शिक्षण प्रणालीमध्ये रिसर्च इन्स्टिट्यूशन आणि अकॅडमिक इन्स्टिट्यूशन वेगवेगळ्या होणार आहेत आणि एका बाजूला स्किल इंडियाचा प्रोग्राम राबवला जाणार आहे. म्हणजे मला शंका आहे की आपण जातीची पुनर्रचना करण्याच्या स्थितीमध्ये तर नाही आहोत ना. संविधानाचा आधार घेऊन, संविधानाने दिलेले अधिकार वापरत, संविधानालाच इन्स्ट्रुमेंट बनवत आपण खालच्या जाती वर्गांना पुन्हा शिक्षणातून एक्सक्लूड करणारी एक नवीन व्यवस्था जन्माला घालत तर नाही आहोत ना. कारण ज्या लोकांना लोकशाही काय आहे कळत नाही त्या लोकांसाठी लोकशाही हे त्यांच्या शोषणाचं हत्यार बनते. त्यामुळे लोकांनी निवडून दिलेलं सरकार हे लोकांसाठीच काम करेल याची शाश्वती नाही, याची हमी नाही, तो आपला अनुभव नाही. लोकांनी निवडून दिलेलं सरकार हे वरच्या कॅपिटलिस्ट वर्गासाठी, क्रोनी कॅपिटलिस्ट लोकांसाठी सुद्धा काम करते, करू शकते. हा आपलाच अनुभव आहे असं नाही, हा जागतिक स्तरावरचा अनुभव आहे लोकशाहीच्या संदर्भामध्ये. म्हणजे मला अरिस्टॉटल जे बोलला की लोकशाही मूर्खाची शासन प्रणाली आहे याचं मला समर्थन करायचं नाही. परंतु लोकशाहीमध्ये असणारा जागृत नागरिक, ज्याला आपण जागृत नागरिक असं म्हणावं, मतदान करणारा जागृत नागरिक ज्याला आपण असं म्हणावं, जो स्वतःचं मत देतो, वोट. पण हा वोट देणारा, स्वतःचं मत देणारा हा जागृत नागरिक खरोखर ज्याचं स्वतःचं मत असते का, स्वतःचं ओपिनियन असते का, हा ओपिनियन निर्माण करण्या एवढा जागृत असतो का? आणि ज्याचं ओपिनियन नसते तो वोट कसा देऊ शकेल? ज्याला स्वतःचं मत नाही तो मत देतो आहे. त्यामुळे अनेकदा ही लोकशाही मत देणाऱ्या नागरिकांच्या शोषणाचं हत्यार ठरू शकते. ठरते. म्हणजे बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर जे म्हणाले होते ना की संविधान किती चांगलं असलं तरी इम्प्लिमेंट करणारे लोक जर अक्षम असतील तर त्या संविधानाला तुम्ही लागूच करू शकता. आज जेव्हा एवढ्या वर्षानंतर आपण चर्चा करतो आहोत संविधानाची, तेव्हा आपण याची चर्चा केली पाहिजे की संविधानाने निर्माण केलेली मूल्य आपण आपल्या समाजात, भारतीय समाजात स्थापित करू शकलो आहोत का? स्थापित न करण्याची कारणं कोणती? राजकीय कारणं कोणती आहेत? सामाजिक कारणं कोणती आहेत? आर्थिक कारणं कोणती आहेत? त्यांनी जे काही समता, स्वातंत्र्य, बंधुत्व, सामाजिक न्याय आणि इहवादाचं स्वप्न बघितलेलं असेल, सेक्युलरिझमचा, मी धर्मनिरपेक्षता नाही म्हणत आहे, सर्व धर्म संभाव नाही म्हणत आहे, मी पंथनिरपेक्षता नाही म्हणत आहे, हे पॉलिटिकल ट्रान्सलेशन्स आहेत. सेक्युलरिझम हाच शब्द बरोबर आहे. ते जे काही सेक्युलरिझमचं स्वप्न बघितलं असेल, ते सारेची सारी मूल्य आपण आपल्या समाजात स्थापित करण्यास आपण सक्षम आहोत का? स्थापित केलेली आहेत, नाही आहेत, तो एक वेगळा चर्चेचा विषय. आपण सक्षम आहोत का? तसा आपला नागरिक सक्षम आहे का? नागरिक, लोक म्हणण्यापेक्षा तेव्हा हा चेतन आहे का? राजकारणाची चर्चा करायची गरज नाही, कारण संविधान भारतातील लोकांसाठी आहे, द पीपल ऑफ इंडियासाठी आहे, वी द पीपल साठी आहे. या सगळ्या अँगलने जेव्हा आपण चर्चा करू तेव्हा खऱ्या अर्थाने आपण संविधानाचं एवढ्या वर्षानंतर मूल्यांकन करू शकू, असं माझं व्यक्तिगत मत आहे. मित्र, खर तर 10:15 पासून आपण आहात, 10:30 पासून आपण आहात, आणि जवळपास 1 तास रेडकर मॅडमचं एक अतिशय सुंदर असं विश्लेषण ऐकल्यानंतर माझा हा थोडासा वेगळा असा क्रिटिकल अप्रोच, हा क्रिटिकल अप्रोच अजून वाढवता येऊ शकते कदाचित वेगवेगळ्या क्षेत्रांमध्ये, वेगवेगळ्या स्पेसेसमध्ये. परंतु अनेकदा समजणाऱ्याला इशारा काफी असतो, असं हिंदीमध्ये म्हटलं जातं की समजणे वाले को इशारा काफी होता है. आणि म्हणून तुम्ही हे क्रिटिकल अप्रोच वेगवेगळ्या स्पेसेसमध्ये, सिव्हिल सोसायटीच्या स्पेसेसमध्ये, पॉलिटिकल स्पेसेसमध्ये, इकॉनॉमिक स्पेसेसमध्ये तुम्ही वापरावं आणि समजून घ्यावं, एवढी मी अपेक्षा करतो आणि मी तर थांबतो. धन्यवाद.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable inputs. You have talked from a sociological aspect of political democracy, emphasizing on the constitutional values to be practiced to shape an ideal democracy. We are always in need of your strong-minded suggestions and guidance, indeed, in more of our future program. Thank you very much, sir, once again. Dear participant, Dr. Dr. Chaitra Redkar madam is there in online. So if there is any questions, the forum is open for discussion. If there is any queries or questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. Madam is there to satisfy your queries. Madam, as such, there is no questions in chat box.
Yes, there are no
Yes.
questions there.
No questions. So I hope you have fully, your presentation was full of content and up to the mark. So to satisfy the need of the participants, I feel, ma'am. So thank you very much for being connected with us till now. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it is said, no duty is more urgent than that of returning thanks. So I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the formal vote of thanks for today's inaugural program. On behalf of the organizing team of the cluster institutions, I take this prestigious opportunity to express my deep sense of gratitude to today's guest of honor, Honorable Dr. Sanjay Dude sir, for accepting our invitation as today's guest. With immense exultation, I express my deep sense of gratitude to the keynote speaker, Honorable Dr. Chaitra Redkar Madam, for delivering her valuable piece of address in a very lucid way. Thank you once again, ma'am. I place on record to mention my deep sense of gratitude to the chairperson of today's inaugural function, Honorable Dr. Pradeep Meshram sir, for chairing the session. My profound thanks to all the resource persons for accepting our invitation and to be the central and phenomenal part of this 6-day online interdisciplinary discourse. I should mention special thanks to the conveners of the program, Professor Dr. Shamrao Kureti sir, Dr. Usha Sakure madam, and Dr. Urmila Dabir madam for their constant support and encouragement in all our efforts. My special thanks to the coordinators of the program, organizing secretaries, and all the organizing committee members of the program for their active cooperation for making this program successful. I extend my heartfelt thanks to all the research aspirants and all enthusiastic participants for your active presentation in today's inaugural function. Having an optimistic attitude and believing that better things are ahead to enjoy learning, with this hope and with the consent of Chair, I hereby declare the end of the inaugural function. Meet you tomorrow sharp at 11 a.m. for our first academic discourse by Honorable Dr. Urmila Dabir Madam, who would be addressing on the topic, The Journey of Indian Literature in 7 Decades, a Reflection. Till then, have a good day. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.